This video will cover unit testing functions with Python unit test module and TestCase class. In software development, automated testing is required to assure there is quality assurance and development. A unit test tests a single unit of code independent of the system to make sure the piece of code functions as it was intended. While this course teaches programming fundamentals, it's important to introduce testing to students early in their learning process to instill good development practices. We'll work through a simple payroll module to show the importance of unit test functions. Let's get started. We'll start from scratch. We'll create a payroll module, and what we'll do is we'll define a function to test. We'll set up our module as follows. Import module, unit test case. This is Python's automated unit test module. And we'll also import payroll module. Class test payroll, unit test case helps us set up our test. And if name equals main, simply tells the interpreter that if this file is the main program, then run the unit test main function. We pass it verbosity equals 2, and this gives us details when the unit tests are run. Let's begin by testing a function that we'll create. Get regular hours. So let's create a test. Def test get regular hours when hours greater than 40. And this is a syntax to set up this test. For now, do not worry about what class and self mean. We will talk about that later in the course. So what we want to do is we want to create a function, regular hours, that takes in one parameter, hours worked, and it will return 40 hours if hours worked over 40. Otherwise, it will return regular hours if no overtime. So we create the test case. What this means is we're going to compare two different numbers. We'll compare what the function returns. So we say payroll dot get regular hours. We pass it the argument 40, a literal integer, and what we expect is the function to return 40, and we run the test. The test fails because get regular function does not exist. And it doesn't. We go to payroll, it doesn't exist. So let's define get regular hours, takes a parameter hours worked, and we want it to return 0. We come back, we run the test again, and it fails again. Although this process that I've just demonstrated may seem silly, it forces developers to write unit tests first. Afterward, the developer produces only the code needed for the program, but more importantly, adds quality assurance for each function. We are saying that if hours worked greater than 40, return 40. So now we rerun the test, we come back to payroll test module, run the test again. Now the function passes because getRegularHours is returning 40, and that's what we expect. Now let's test the case when regular hours is less than 40. Less than 40. Thus, if we send 35, we expect the function to return 35. We run the test, and it fails. It fails because our function currently handles cases of hours greater than 40. We need to add the code to pass the test. So if hours greater than 40, return 40, else return hours worked. Run the test again, and now the test passes because the code that we added returns 35, and we compare it to the 35, and that's what we expect. And we move on to define another function. This time we will test a new function that's called getOTHours. Let's create the test def test getOTHours when hours greater than 40 self dot assert are equal. We want to test payroll dot get OT hours, and we want to send it 45, and our function should return 5. We run the test, and the test fails because getOTHours doesn't exist. We go to the payroll module and we create getOTHours, parameter hours worked. We return 0. We run the test again. The test fails made a typo here. The test will fail. Let's run the test, and it fails because 0 is not equal to 5. Let's add code to make this test pass. So if hours worked greater than 40, return hours worked minus 40, and we run the test again. We run the test passes. Now let's handle a case when OT hours parameter is less than 40. We self-assert equal. We want to test payroll get OT hours. We want to send in 35 hours. And we expect 0 overtime hours. We run the test, and it fails. Go back to payroll module. We add the code to make this test pass. So if the hours are not over 40, then we want to return 0. What did I do here? Well, else 0, nope, else return 0. There we go. And now the test passes as expected. Finally, why do we go through all this trouble? Well, let's assume that another developer comes in here and changes this code. For some reason, the developer thinks this logic should return 0. So once the developer changes this, and as soon as a unit test run, then that procedure will fail, and that will alarm the development team that one of the functions no longer functions as expected. Get regular hours, so somebody can come in here, troubleshoot, and they look at this and they're like, oh wow, this is incorrect, they should return hours worked. And then they check in the code and run the unit test again, and the code passes. That's what I mean. So in review, the importance of unit testing is to assure development quality. And I stress again that although this may seem silly, it forces developers to write unit tests and produces only the code that the program needs. But more importantly, it adds quality assurance for each piece of code. And that was unit testing.